Christ. Cool.
Alright, folks, today we got a very special guest. I've decided to take a break from interviewing journalists and I decided to go international. So today we're featuring special guest Spike, who I contacted through some of the world's most interesting Reddit communities, and not necessarily for the best reasons. You got anything you want to say to the 0 people watching right now?
Not really.
I can't blame you.
Oh,
Alright, so seeing as we take ourselves seriously here, how is the COVID situation in the United Kingdom?
well, I think they're currently saying it's good. I think, if I remember correctly, there's some ridiculously high number of vaccinated people, and there's still just. I think, well, now currently, I know they've relaxed all rules in Scotland, except you still have to wear a face mask if you're in, like, shops. But they've got, like, nightclubs open now, so I guess they think it's safe.
Has there been much issue with the vaccinated people continuing to transmit the virus? I know Delta seems to be a predominant variant over there.
I think so. I think the big issue is, I believe, kids now. I don't think there's really much. I think there is still certainly the anti-vaxxer community that you are seeing everywhere, but it's not so much the big issue,
So would you
from what
say
I can tell.
would you say that the influence of the anti-vaxxer community within the United Kingdom is proportionally speaking equivalent to or less than the influence of the anti-vax community here in the United States?
But from what I can tell, in America, you've sort of got a lot more. I think that's a lot more evangelical. From what I can tell, it's sort of, um, you sort of have overlap between QAnon and sort of like these hardcore Trump Republicans and evangelicals, and where they sort of meet, you sort of have this big community of anti-vaxxers who think it's either like these are all Satans, this is like, um, and Democrats are using it to spread the virus, and some shit about Bill Gates using it to make control people or whatever.
Yeah, that's fun stuff. Has QAnon had the same buy-in over there?
Well, no, because a lot of it. I mean, sure, there has been some people who are like, oh yeah, I support it because clearly just non-people unlike us. But I think in America, it's sort of um, like behind Trump, you can sort of see that it's like, oh, because a lot of the rhetoric is like, oh, Trump will be president because election is rigged and um, called President. I should probably can. His president is. I forgot his name now. I want to say Biden. Is it Biden?
Yeah, Biden's the president.
Yeah.
Harris, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, Biden's secretly this child predator, and the Clintons are behind everything. And it's all the Chinese as well. You should hear a lot about.
Yeah, I guess we're really giving a good impression of ourselves to the overseas populations.
Alright, but yeah, again, like the whole point, Americans left a lot of the British ex-British migrants are, these religious people who disagreed with the church.
Huh. All right. So
Obviously, there's other people, but you get like your fuck, like Pennsylvania was by these Puritan kind.
hey, just note. It seems that there might be some cutting out issues with your mic, but it's nothing too bad right now. Just wanting to be informed.
Oh shit.
It's fine. I got a really ghetto setup on my end, so I know the struggle.
Aye.
Is there okay? So honestly, I have to say your assessment's pretty correct from what I see of things here. I don't know. Um, let's see. I got another question. So, is the UK currently in any real sort of wave of infections right now, or is it has been holding steady since the Delta wave there?
I think it's less than it was expected because I remember they were saying that once the Independence Day or whatever they called it, Liberation Day, I think, there was like expectations it would be this massive big wave, but I think it was actually a lot less than was predicted. I think it did increase just because everyone's now much freer than they were before.
So, and just I guess more tangential related. Speaking of freedoms, have you has there ever been any massive call of threats to violence or such against either elected officials, health officials, by those who are opposed to lockdowns, or is that a uniquely American phenomenon?
Uh, I mean, there was anti-vaxxers tried to storm the BBC's headquarters 2 days ago, but they went to like the wrong building. It was like some place the BBC haven't like been in for like 8 years. The police had to be called, and I think some of the people filming in the building, because the BBC had leased it out, were all like worried that these people were going to like attack them on air or whatever.
Well, sir, man, I don't even know what to say, man. I'm quite boggled by the stuff we're seeing too. At least no one got hurt there.
I think they just kind of left.
I'd be really happy if more of the anti-vaxxers did that. My nephews have started school. I think you would refer to it as primary school. We call it elementary. So, right now, our county in this part of the country is the largest in the state, and it's also has a relatively good reputation nationwide. And every time the school board has hosted a meeting, tons of anti-vaxxers show up, causing mayhem and ruckus. Nothing explicitly violent, but does not make it a pleasant situation.
I was reading somewhere that I think a school and the state have, I think in the South, have gotten to like logheads because I think the school wants to enforce masks, but I think the state disagrees because freedom, and that I think was, I can't remember where. I'm not sure where, but it's sort of like this news.
Don't worry, it's a bunch of places.
Oh yeah, sure, it's like a bunch of places. I think that was more emblematic.
Yeah, the two examples that come to mind when speaking of that phenomenon are specifically Texas and Florida. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, has aspirations to fill the niche Trump left in the party, so he's taken very interventionist measures, such as banning cruise ships from requiring vaccine passports, which are also a huge, well, not a huge part, but a significant part of Florida's economy. And that stuff, the Republican base, which has once been completely anti-regulation on businesses, now seems to be eating that stuff right up.
I sort of wonder, I think I remember reading somewhere that it was like freedom for me, not for thee, or something like that, when it comes to certain groups of the modern Republican Party.
That's the mentality nowadays. So, one thing I'm not... Do you know who Newt Gingrich is?
Very fucking vaguely. I think I believe he's one of those people that people mention a lot negatively.
Yeah, so for some context on the collapse of the Republican... Well, the moral collapse of the Republican Party. In the late 80s, I think early 90s, Newt Gingrich got elected to the House of Representatives along with a huge wave of Republicans on what's known as the Contract with America, basically pursuing what has been seen as conventional Republican ticket items, such as deregulation, socially conservative policies, all that fun jazz. And in addition to that policy platform, they've also pursued a really confrontational method of politics that has laid the groundwork for a lot of the chaos we've been seeing now. The attitudes and such. So in some sense, Newt Gingrich can be representing the new wave of the party now. He's the vanguard for all the troubles we see nowadays. Very influential, sadly, but not one I guess a lot of people overseas know about. And quite frankly, not even too many Americans have paid attention to it either, but I'll just say this, the Republican Party has had a huge fall from grace in this country. Not even within the past 150 years, but just the 50 alone.
Well, I remember sort of, Mitt Romney, I think over here, no one really cared. I think most people were like, oh yeah, Obama will win, because I think he had quite a special relationship sort of thing with the UK. But I think over here, a lot of people were still, I wouldn't say wary of Trump, but you sort of had people like Farage and who were very much pro-Trump. I don't know if I'm thinking of someone else, but I think Trump did try to get him to be like some part of the diplomatic sphere between the UK and America.
Yeah.
But there was obviously, because I was at secondary during the first election, I remember a lot of people were talking about it, even though this was a foreign election and 2012 election wasn't really discussed. It was sort of, but like Donald Trump, you would have people who did support Trump and those who didn't, which is quite interesting compared to 2012.
So, from your side of the pond, have you noticed any demographic breakdowns of predominant Trump-friendly British?
You can. It's sort of like those who lean more left and those who lean more right kind of reflects. You know, it's like those who respect Trump for some of his policies like him, but those who dislike Trump because of his policies don't like him. It's sort of, you know, pretty much like America, but less specific extent.
I see. That's, yeah. I mean, that's not unexpected, but it's still interesting to get the context of things. So I guess I want to ask you a few questions now, a bit more specific to the politics of the United Kingdom, if that's all right.
Yeah.
All right. So I know quite a few of the Scottish are quite unhappy with the Brexit hassling, and now there is some. We occasionally get tabloid stories about the possibility of a second referendum. What is your opinion on the probability of such a thing occurring within the next 10 years, and what its outcome would be?
Yeah, no fucking way London's giving them the referendum. Because I think it's... Because the Scottish Parliament was passed by a law in London, London has the authority. It is London's prerogative to allow the referendum, and there is... Until there is a Prime Minister or a party that supports Scottish independence, there will probably not be a referendum for quite a while.
So essentially, the Buckingham, well, not, it's not Buckingham Palace. What's the other building?
Westminster.
Westminster. So essentially, all the nations, constituent nations of the British Isles, are more or less held. What do you say? It's an act that they're held hostage to the English aspirations within Westminster Abbey.
I can't remember if it's the West Lothian question or the other one, but you sort of had. This was one of the reasons why devolution was a big thing, was because, you know, it had the English MPs make up the vast majority of all MPs. Can't remember the exact numbers, but I think there's like 500 odd English MPs. You have 15 odd Scottish, not sure how many Welsh, and you have about 8 Irish, with about half of them not turning up.
Really, the Irish aren't turning up to.
So I think Sinn Féin is this Irish nationalist party, and since their founding, they do not turn up to abstain from English policies because they don't see the government in London as legitimate. So they, since founding, do not turn up, and that you blame for a lot of things. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. And so from, I guess the one thing that we are kind of aware of in America, but we don't really get a good example of, is how much tension does there remain between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland nowadays? I know the Troubles really aren't that old, but I guess for a lot of people younger here, we don't really have much context on that.
I don't think between the state as a majority care. I think, you know, it's been like 100 years, not a century since they've split. And I mean, the Queen went on a visit there fine 2 years ago. So it's not like there's any bad blood. A lot of it is, but I know in Northern Ireland itself, there have been recent bouts of violence between Protestants and Catholics.
So does it seem likely that there would be, that I say the, how do I put this? So does it seem likely within the next 50 years that Northern Ireland would get reincorporated into the Republic of Ireland?
I don't think so. It all depends on like demographics and that, because Protestants largely want to stay, and some Northern Irish want to stay in the UK, some want to join the Republic, and some want to form their own country, like the Republic of Ulster, whatever.
So it's a pretty fraught issue even within themselves, I guess.
Because you've got like more extremists on these factions and these factions, and you have the provos being, I think it's the PRIRA, or now just like glorified drug gangs. I think.
That's kind of consistent with a lot of domestic terror groups. Is that they start off as terrorists and they turn into drug dealers. I think that's a pretty big element, I think, of the white nationalists back before they started getting reorganized like they are in this current wave.
I only really remember that because in like TSC we had to like watch a documentary about legal highs, and it had like the remnants of the IRA had like would just go around being a drug gang.
Yeah. Alright, I guess let's moderate things by moving to a bit of a lighter topic. You've mentioned that you study the humanities. What has that experience been like, especially with the post-secondary system of the United Kingdom?
I have anything to compare it to. I think in many ways my sort of post-secondary education is different from many others, purely due to how my university is structured. So where another university is like one campus, everyone goes there. Because of the way my university is, it's like we have campuses in Inverness, Elgin, Dornoch, Perth, Shetland, Orkney, a bunch of other places. So how it works is that we use digital sort of video conferencing, and we have to and we don't really do a lot of stuff inside lecture classrooms. We don't have to spend a certain amount of time doing these kind of stuff, those activities. It sounds like what you make primary kids do, but you wouldn't have to sit at a desk and write out these certain amount of words or whatever. The most you have to do for actual assignments is pretty much a case of typing up an essay, sending it, and then getting your results back.
That's interesting. So that system, more or less decentralized online system, did that exist long before the pandemic, or is that something
different? But as I said, it's because of how the sort of university is structured, where you have students who are Northern Ireland, you have students in Murray. They're so far apart that you have to have this system where you do not have to rely on close contact. No, face to face.
That's very interesting. Over here in the States, our primary college experience is residential, so stuff like that is pretty much, having pre-pandemic heavy remote learning emphasis is pretty much unheard of.
Well, we had the Open University, which was something separate, which was this thing where I think they had their own TV channel where they would have lectures, and you would have to sit at a certain time and watch that broadcast. So I think now they've moved online to simplify that. But yeah, that was a thing from the 80s, I think.
Wow, the 80s. That's
Okay.
Yeah, it's no, that's so. So in general, with your university, is that more or less tailored towards the Celtic population of the United Kingdom, or does that also have a high English enrollment?
I mean, you've got there is a lot of them are Scottish, mostly because of the whole free tuition thing. But you do get mainland Europeans, I guess, a third word. I've had Poles, you have Germans, you have a couple, I think, Finnish. But I think I've also had a Canadian. But yes, largely Scottish because of the whole free tuition thing.
So the free tuition, is that guaranteed by the national system, or is that?
Yes. I'm trying to remember history about it, but it's I think it was an SNP thing.
Oh.
Trying to look it up. I actually cannot find it because it all just talks about how to apply for it, not history of it. But basically, they were oh yes, tuition is free in Scotland. If you're Scottish, it's reduced if you were from England and Wales, and I think it was less slightly more if you're from the EU, and I think just the normal amount if you're from outside the EU.
So wait, so by ethnicity, there's actually different tuition rates.
Not by ethnicity, it's not like an ethnic thing, it's sort of like,
Regional, by residency?
I think by residency, because I know I have a couple of classmates in secondary who've got free tuition, so I think it is based on residency.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah. I don't think I've ever heard of any sort of system like that even in the United States. I know that there is a certain programs that are from the government designed to help minorities for businesses. I know that the Appalachian region, known for its poverty, has several specially dedicated grants and welfare administrations, but I've never really heard of stuff like that. That's an interesting perspective. Oh, I guess that's all. One other thing is that these universities are older, far older than vast majority of American ones, just by history, right?
I mean, some are older than the country. I think the oldest is St. Andrews, which was founded in like,
Wow.
founded in, why can't these things be easy to, 1413.
1413. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I guess I thought it was Oxford that was older, but I guess no. Then St.
Oh, I think they're roughly the same age, but I know within Scotland, and St Andrews is the oldest. I'll quickly double check. I'm not actually, obviously not an expert on universities. Oh yeah, so Oxford is about 1096.
1096. That's what
Yeah.
only after like what 30 years after the Norman invasion.
Oh yeah, it would be.
So, one of the interesting things, at least, despite all the comparisons between the United States and the United Kingdom, the one thing I've always found interesting is just how much older the history is for you guys. Compared to us, vast majority of our I mean, what, you compare about 1,000, 1,500 years to 250? I think in some ways, those of us in the United States, because our historical context is just so much shorter, we might not have as much of an appreciation for other cultures that have had longer cultural existences.
I don't know. I think that depends on the individual. I mean,
That's
I
fair.
mean, sort of like you can Scotland, like 1,000 odd years of existence, whatever. It's 8th century. So it's like nothing compared to like Chinese states, which have been there. The claimed 2,600 odd years of Japan. It's sort of like you get the feeling more that these states have changed so much that you are aware that these long dates don't really matter. And you can't really compare the Kingdom of Scotland to like the modern Kingdom of Great Britain that you have now.
That's fair. So, Mike, I guess I'm going to delve into a bit of some of your personal politics. Would you identify more as a monarchist or as a Republican?
I don't give a shit. I don't think it would change much whether we had kingdom or if we just became this republic.
I guess.
I don't even think I care that much. I think even the S&P outside of hardliners want to be like Canada or something, where we're a different state, but we still sort of have the Queen and the Commonwealth.
That's fair. So, I guess one more of a specific question I have about the United Kingdom. So, one comparison I've heard in the past is that food from the Indian subcontinent is basically well, I'm not saying necessarily yours, but the equivalent of Mexican food for us over here in the States. Would you say that that's a fair assessment, or is it still generalizing a bit too much?
Yeah, because when you have your Tex-Mex, it's not Mexican, but you sort of over here you have how we have our sort of curries and Indian. They are different. In fact, I think a lot of them were just made up in like Manchester and Edinburgh by people who had served over there and came back and sort of tried to remake it. Because I think it's like, what's it called? Chicken con carne? Chicken tikka masala, I think, is just like a British invention that we just made up and passed off as Indian.
That's same with Chinese food here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like over there it's sort of like rice based, but over here it's sauce based. You have more sauce per rice than over there.
So I guess that would be more or less drawn from like the traditional system of cooking for with stews.
Yes. Yeah. I know that the curry, the sort of the word curry allegedly comes from a
Yeah.
word that was used to stews or something. I don't know. I'm not really a specialist on food.
Yeah, I've heard that's pronunciation. I don't know. I find the sort of prevalence of curry kind of interesting because it's kind of more or less the British interpretation has spread outside of the United Kingdom. Good example is, Japanese style curries, in fact, inspired by the British style of cooking it, and enough so that I think even the Japanese Imperial Navy.
Well, that was
Yeah, please clarify. You know more about this more than me, I assume.
yeah. So I think it came from the Navy because I forget what it was, but it sort of helped with fucking berry, I think, which is like this thing detriment. So I think the Japanese Navy took on a lot of aspects from the Royal Navy, such as having curry. So I think they still, I think in the MSDF, I think they still continue this tradition of having once a week curry on this day. I think it's a Saturday, might be a Sunday.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually know about that. I do know that at least in the older times they actually ate it with fork and knife too, which I find rather interesting.
Eat it with a spoon nowadays.
They still do. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that kind of using those utensils more or less have spread around the world, if not necessarily because of imperialism, just the knowledge of it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
So I guess I'll ask some of the more generic questions if you're game for them.
So,
All right. So what is the interpretation that a lot of people in the United Kingdom have about America nowadays? Has it really changed, or is it about the same?
I mean, I think a lot more you have. Before you would have like an American perception of them being idiots, but sort of like lovable idiots, and sometimes a bit sex crazy, which I think is more from World War II than really anything else. I think now it's a lot of stereotypes are either, absolute brain dead, racist, sexist, evangelical who repeats everything his pastor says, right down to his vote, to like, I guess,
So,
I don't know, a lot of more, I guess, negative views of certain parts of America that you get in the anti-SJW circles.
I mean, I guess that's kind of some of the whiplash from going from Obama to Trump, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a lot because I want to say because of the proliferation of information through the internet that you now can just see like some dumbass in the deep south saying, oh, my pastor says that Hillary Clinton is a lizard person from Nibiru and is sent here by Satan to end American freedom or something.
Yeah, we get enough of that. My question is, so is America still seen as a white nation, or was it never seen as that in the first place?
Well, I think it's still seen as majority white. I mean, certainly you get which I think is more of because of the growth of Britain's Afro-Caribbean community. You do get a lot of African American culture and music, and I mean, obviously, you still get like traditional, more middle-class white people listening to rap. I suppose you'll forget Asian American cultural stuff you see people talk about.
So, how popular is, say, K-pop in the United Kingdom? Is it the same phenomenon as exists in the States, or is it still relatively obscure?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to teenage girls since I was in secondary, so.
Fair. Just random curiosities on my end.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think you really hear about it in the way you get the K-pop stands, as they call themselves. I
Yeah.
do think that's more of like it. I think it's more of. I don't think weeabooism and that sort of subsection of life don't really get on Charlotte people for various reasons. But yeah.
Okay, let me try to figure out some other things on the docket. So, what would you say is your current course of study right now?
Well, I'm just doing my fourth year of history and politics, which is a joint honours. Um, so I'm mostly doing my dissertation, which is so my dissertation sort of comparing the British policies regarding the Falklands and the Iraq War.
Oh,
As you can probably tell, I've mostly been reading about Falklands recently.
yeah, I'd say that's high level stuff, isn't it? And you said this is your a fourth year dissertation?
Yeah, fourth year dissertation.
Do you plan on continuing your studies into graduate school, or?
Yeah, I've been thinking of doing a master's in security studies, I think it's called. But I have like no idea how you get into that beyond the usual just handing in a application.
Fair. So, what is your envisioned career path with your education?
I have no fucking clue. Doing it simply, I don't even know what jobs there are. Most because I think a lot of jobs have died. I guess the only real thing. I mean, I would like to write on certain issues, geopolitical issues, but I have no idea if there really is a market for that.
So, journalism ever seem like an appealing option for you?
I wouldn't even say journalism. Maybe if that was a good way to get in there, but fuck if I know. You don't really see a lot of people talk about it, so.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it could always be worse. You could always be stuck writing game rant articles based off Reddit.
Yeah, that's a job.
Yeah, well, it pays. People
I
need.
get paid. I get paid more than I do now.
Yeah, same. All right, let me check the. What was it? Okay, you know what? I think we've had some good, serious conversation. I think it's now for us to talk more about the nonsensical. Do you have anything nonsensical you want to talk about?
I don't know. Here, I don't know. Talk about the fucking difference between the day-night cycle of where I live and where you live.
Oh, I'd love to
I
talk.
imagine it.
Okay, so what? Scotland near Amherst, that's really far north, isn't it? That's like middle Canada latitudes, right?
I think so.
How many hours of daylight do you get? Because I know up in North Dakota it's like 6.
I actually have a thing in front of me that says, so, you know, it sort of goes from like, in 21st, 18 hours of sunlight. This is daylight, this is not including twilight or any of the twilight. But you do then get into like December where you get 6 hours, 6.5 hours of daylight.
That sounds like the worst thing ever.
Well, it's sort of gradual, but I would say it's more noticeable in sort of like late in the year where you're awake during it, where it's sort of like 4 o'clock and you're cooking and it's pitch black outside.
Yeah, in this region of the country, the United States, we have relatively consistent timings. I don't know exactly, but they're relatively consistent with it. Like maybe the maximum daylight hour changes like 2 to 3 hours throughout the year. This region of the country is especially popular with Americans from the north who are commonly referred to as snowbirds because the winters are non-existent and they're going to be even more non-existent with climate change. The downside is during the summer it's absolute torture. In fact, today it was 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Let me try to find the Celsius conversion for that. And my computer froze. Celsius to whatever, man. This is dumb. Let's see. That's going to be 36.1. There we go.
Christ. I think there's been mostly been about 22 degrees Celsius. So that is in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, everyone's got their own, and it's even worse in Florida because where I live at least, we got coastal plains to the south, we got mountains to the north. It's temperate for the state, but Florida, pure moisture. Florida's just like what, 50 miles wide, and it's close to the equator. Florida's the real big, popular site to go for the snowbirds, and it's, man, you hear about crazy Florida stuff with heat like that. I can't blame them for that happening. I can blame them for everything else though.
Well, I believe a lot of American, Floridian craziness, I think it's due to a really lack, what they're called, but like laws where you can literally just call up a police station and ask for all the weird shit.
Yeah, it
Florida
is.
is not easy compared to every other state, so you just get this thing where for journalists to phone up random phone to ask people shit.
One other thing to account for is the fact that a lot of the Florida is huge as like a retirement home base.
Oh yeah.
I think in the past election cycle, there was a region of Florida known as the Villages. That's basically suburbia, but for boomers. Well, not even boomers, like retired people. And I think during the Trump campaign got into some trouble because they shared a video from someone in the Villages who had, what was it, shouted white power as they drove by on a golf cart. Of course, all the Republicans equivocated for this, but it was that's the Florida snowbird attitude I want people to be aware of. Of course, I can't really say that Georgia's all that better considering who our governor is and the people who support him, but at least we don't got Disney World.
I mean, a lot of our people sort of like moved to, well, they used to move to sort of Spain, south of France, and Spain.
Oh yeah, so yeah, Spain actually is Spain a particularly popular holiday destination for people in the UK, or is that just kind of evenly distributed with other Mediterranean countries?
I would say yes, from what I understand. I think Ibiza is extremely popular for like British teenagers and young adults, because that's sort of where like I think like the fucking BBC, their dance DJs all go down to Ibiza and go to join this massive party. I don't know if it's like an Ibizan thing natively, or if it's just this thing where just a bunch of British fucking dipshits go down south to Ibiza to dance themselves so badly that the fucking British police have to go over there and help the local police.
Oh, that's great. So this is the real content on my channel, is when we get the guests to start swearing. It's the best. It's when it gets fun.
Alright.
Hey, don't feel self-conscious, man. It's good that you're swearing. That's exactly consistent with everything else I need. But dude, perfect fulfillment. Okay, so I don't know. What would you say that? Okay, so here's one thing I'm kind of personally curious about. How much power does the British nobility still have? Is it really more just wealth and social, or do they still have some political influence?
I think all nobility now, I think the most influence you're going to have is either pretty much just being a Tory MP. I mean, I think it was Blair or Brown, they passed, I think that Labour government, the last Labour government, passed this law that got rid of most inherited seats in the House of Lords, just to get rid of the House of Lords. And so I think a lot of nobility was lost from the House of Lords.
You know,
obviously there's still the lower spiritual, but whatever.
Does the House of Lords really have any full function, or because like over here we get the impression it's kind of like a rump house?
Kind of, but like they can delay laws, they can change things, they can add stuff, they can get rid of stuff. I think the biggest issue for a lot of people is the Lord Spiritual, which is, I think they're bishops of the Church of England. I think there's either somewhere between 5 and 10 of them.
Oh yeah, I forgot. England does like has a state. You have like a state church.
Yes. You have the Church of Scotland, which is the state church and is Presbyterian for historic reasons, and then you have the Church of England, which is Anglican and has the Queen as its head, again due to historic reasons.
Yep. So, okay, one thing you know, here in the United States, we got a bunch of different church denominations, but I never really could tell the difference between too many of them. What's the difference between the Presbyterian branch and the Anglican branch?
So, aside from like specific literature, you have Presbyterianism is, you know, I can't remember called the tulip thing or whatever it's called, where it's like, but a lot of it boils down to predestination, where it's like God decided years ago what would happen to you, and therefore you will either go to heaven or hell because of this. Then again, there's also, I think the difficulty with explaining this is because the Church of England has its own subsection between Anglo-Catholics, I think. And then you have, okay, so you have high church and low church and sort of this medium church. You have high church, which is literally just Catholicism minus Pope. Then you have low church, which is more closer to evangelical Protestantism. And then you have this middle bit, sort of in between both.
That's interesting. So, do you ever get any modern weirdness from the churches, or is it more or less just kind of like a vestige of old days?
A lot of them just split off if they're weird. Because I mean, so you have, I think they're called the We Free, which is this split off from the Church of Scotland over theological issues, and they're known for being much more hardline. Similarly, I think the Presbyterians in Northern Ireland are known for being very, very hardline. I think to the extent that children's play parks are like completely locked off just to stop them from having fun on the Sabbath.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's
I think I can remember reading somewhere. I think to a certain level of more comedy, it was like the most sort of. I think in America you have Piss Jesus. In Scottish Presbyterianism, you have a pastor dating, and that was this very controversial thing, where a pastor was having fun on the Sabbath.
well, definitely old world stuff to me. All right, so
Well, yeah, because they were Puritans. A lot of the Presbyterian Church were Puritans, and what we would refer to as Puritans colloquially were also Presbyterian.
honestly, I never really knew much about the Puritans, at least from the American interpretation, because in fact, it was only until last year I kind of realized that New Englanders, like WASPs, were actually descendants of Puritans. I kind of thought they all disappeared around the 1800s.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Puritans were those who, from what I understand, a lot of the Puritans to America were those who thought the Church of England was too lax and didn't have the proper following of God, so left to found their own churches.
Yeah, we in this country have a really nice history of really radical religious movements. Occasionally, they turn out to be more benign, but that's not usually the case. Alright, so, is there anything special about the food in Scotland? I guess people know about haggis, but I doubt that's really a point of pride. Is there anything you would recommend as something special that's not so well known?
I mean, like as you said, the haggis does get a bad rap, but it's not that bad.
Oh, okay.
Because at the end of the day, the haggis is a sausage, and all sausages are just bits of animals shoved together into skin. You just take the spice. There's also stuff like, there's a lot of fish, some fish dishes. There's cockaleahy soup. There's I can't remember what it's called now. There's like some smoked fish soup that's really big in one of the towns between here and Aberdeen. There's also stuff like Lorne sausage. Then you also get like less traditional stuff like your deep fried shit. Well, not literal shit, but like deep fried Mars bars, deep fried whatever they can get. But I think one of the main famous things of like cross-cultural food is like deep fried Indian dishes. There's also Iron Brew, the very notoriously very Scottish drinking company. There's these fucking Tunnocks chocolate wafers, and also Tunnocks tea cakes, which are also quite popular in Scottish culinary culture.
That's So what's the beer scene like? Are microbreweries a big thing, or is it still more or less
Well,
consoled?
I think one that got really popular was Brewdog, which was in Ellen, which is a town just north of Aberdeen, and they were like, I think they're really big. It's really big brewery, but I mean, I think they're getting into a bit of PR trouble now because of toxic work environment and all that, and some of the adverts are a bit cringe. But yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff you see now, especially if you go into like glasses part of the beer aisle.
Oh. So, would you say that the best alcohol in Scotland is actually the liquor or the lighter stuff?
I mean, personally, I don't drink whiskey. Um, I mean, I could probably name quite a few good Scottish beers, but can't really think of.
That
The
then.
issue is I don't really drink that much. I don't drink much in terms of like cider or uh, whiskey. I can't really tell you all about all the good local distilleries, because there are a fucking ton of them. Though a lot of them are more eastwards in the Speyside, I think it's called, which is like its own small area where they have their own whiskey and they just brand themselves as this local thing. And I think you can go on like a sort of tour, or you could go on a sort of tour around all the distilleries there.
It's interesting, yeah. For our end over here, Atlanta, Georgia is really known for having a robust microbrewery scene. In fact, one of the bigger, like, independent beer brands, I think Sweetwater, is brewed right next to the train I take anytime I go to campus, which is, I think it's called Sweetwater. They're known for their IPA. I'm not sure. It has huge buy-in here in the state itself, and I'm pretty confident there is a lot of buy-in in other states too. Overall, since I think the financial recession in 2008, there's been a surge of microbrewery, at least the surge of the scene. I think, I don't know. Oh, actually, one thing I do want to ask. Okay, so let's see. We've covered alcohol and vice. What else? We've covered food. What else do you? Okay, from your perspective as someone in the humanities, what's another critical element of fun in a culture?
Fun?
Oh, if such a thing exists.
I don't know. So you get like Scotland, which is stereotypically this dour place where everyone sort of gets rained on, which I think is more, again, due to historic Presbyterianism. Because I remember, this is quite anecdotal, but I remember reading part of historiography, one of the historiography things I'd read was about some guy who was so bored sitting around Aberdeen that he just decided to start, like, collecting disposable, well, not, like, I think it was like a biscuit wrapper, I think it was, and he decided to, like, keep that and then keep others and sort of create the history of, like, wrappers. Wrappers with a W, by the way.
That's a. Oh, I want to ask actually. So, tea, is that like this meal itself? Is that a uniquely English phenomenon?
Do you mean the drink or the?
No, not the drink. The meal.
I think to me, tea is one of those dialect words for an evening meal, personally, where it's either you call your evening meal either like tea or dinner, and that just depends on your parents and where you grew up.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to caffeinated drinks, what's your favorite?
No, I guess there's like Coke. If you're including stuff like tea or coffee, then yeah, I'll sometimes drink tea or coffee. I probably drink tea and coffee more often than I drink soft drinks.
Yeah, I gotta say that I love coffee and soft drinks. In fact, I had a bunch today, in fact. It's more or less become a necessity in my life.
Yeah.
Its most socially acceptable addiction is the addiction to caffeine. Not sure if that's
Yeah.
good or bad.
I mean, it depends on how addicted you are, honestly.
Well, that's true, but it doesn't seem to be as much of an issue, at least because it's easier to sustain and less, less net negative social externalities.
Yeah, I think there's less addictive properties to caffeine or something, isn't there? Compared to like even stuff like alcohol.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
of course it is quite hard to wean off of caffeine if you get too used to it. Obviously, if you drink too much,
I've more or
like,
less,
really caffeinated shit, you can kill yourself.
yeah, I know. I've more or less resigned to fate the fact I'm going to become addicted to caffeine very soon, if not already.
I mean, there's a difference between coffee and energy drink.
Well,
Because I remember, I think there was either a tax. No, I'm thinking there was a tax because of the sugar, but there was they stopped selling energy drinks to under 14. A lot of them would go out at lunch, drink they would buy like a energy drink and then like I think they would either crash or they would just be like in a bad state for quite a while.
Oh yeah, that's. Oh wait, I can actually do. Yeah, you know that's covering quite a bit. All right, any other topics you want to bring up?
I don't know. I'm going to go quickly look at the topics you'd mentioned earlier.
Well, this is a very good opportunity for cultural exchange.
Oh god. Okay.
But it doesn't have to be serious. That's the important thing to remember is that we're both college students and young men, so there is an innate level of stupidity we must adhere to in these scenarios.
I don't know. I guess. I think with the way my university is, you don't really see much in the way of stupidity. Certainly when I lived in like accommodation, you would sometimes be awake at like 2 in the morning listening to your neighbour's dance party in the room adjacent, or they would like fuck up the kitchen every so often.
Yeah, that sounds like fun indeed. I've never actually, I don't actually, the only time I was ever in a college dorm were for 2 Chinese summer camps that were week-long, and then for an honors program I attended during the summer. But for my actual college life, purely stay at home with the parents because it's cheap, and I don't have to go into debt for it.
Ah, that sounds great.
Well, you avoid a lot of stupidity that way because my school does not have a real reputation for being a party school, but some of the frats can be quite problematic, especially when they're situated on one of the main roads into more or less the commerce district of campus.
Yeah, I know that's one of those American media tropes where like the fraternities are like, yes, depending on their sort of how they're portrayed, vary between good, stupid, and like actively malicious assholes.
Yeah, so the American fraternity scene is kind of especially stupid in the Southeast because I think there's a lot of tied into the old pre-Civil War plantation class or the post-Civil War white supremacist merchant class that rose up.
Nice.
In fact, my own school was kind of developed it wouldn't exist if they hadn't lost the Civil War because then they wouldn't have realized they actually needed to industrialize. So in some ironic sense, because of their racism, a lot of brown and minority kids in this state are getting really good educations. Funny how history works out sometimes.
Yeah.
Alright, so let me think about something else that would be equally, well, okay. So do you have any general opinions on, say, electronic entertainment, gaming, and whatnot?
Fuck, you've probably noticed on my Discord, I've pretty much, moment of really only playing like War Thunder, and even then less than I used to. I've been playing fucking Metal Vault, which is one of those moe anthropomorphism games that are so cool with the kids these days.
What? Wait, explain me the last bit. That one, I haven't heard of it.
So, it's actually, I think, one of the older of the this is a thing from World War II, but anime. Though I don't think it's quite as old as Can Cole, but it's sort of one of those things, and it tanks rather than boats. Pretty much the same, well, not really the same sort of tropes apply, but the gameplay is certainly different, and how the interactions between yourself and the characters are very different in Metal Vault.
Wait, is that the visual novel parody one, or is that in this?
No, this is a great example of the genre. I can't even remember what that one is. I know what you're talking about. Metal Maiden? Not Metal Maiden. Panzer Madel, isn't it?
Something like that. God, I think I looked at some of the studio's other games. I think they also made a dating sim where you went to North Korea.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think were they not the same as the My Wife Who's Hitler meme?
They might even be the ones who made that. I gotta. I mean, look. Normally, I'd make crack jokes on these guys, but they know what they're doing, so I gotta give them a pass for that. The absurdity.
Oh God, I've looked up the company, and it's like Attack Helicopter Dated Sim.
Oh, yeah, I think that's it. You know,
What does?
you find some of the weirdest stuff on Steam nowadays.
Yeah, but that's because it went. I mean, it was because of the whole what the fuck was it called? The fucking thing where it's like, oh yeah, you could just submit whatever random bullshit is on your hard drive, and they would publish it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you could
Greenlight,
fucking,
Steam Greenlight. Well,
uh,
there's also the fact that Gaben allowed porn games to be published on Steam uncensored too. That had a huge influence on this.
you know,
Man, Steam has changed so much from like even early high school days. It's I can't go every time I open the catalog just to see what's on sale. There's always like 3 anime games that have the nudity tag just right there. It's kind of hilarious how prevalent it's become.
I've had a few like, oh, goddamn, fucking timing in a Asahi game, which I'm legitimately surprised is still a franchise.
No, I was never. You know, I don't know even how to explain this. I'm not really sure where I fit within the sort of gamer anime domain because I don't follow anime, but I'm anime aware just as a consequence of being in a bunch of adjacent communities, as you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, actually, this is something I really did want to ask. How is it that a fine young Scotsman like you gets introduced to all this weird Japanese Asian stuff?
I have legitimately no clue. I discovered the word anime when I was about 11 and watched anime on YouTube for years.
What
Since
kind?
I
Was it
learned
like
it.
Naruto and Bleach or? Oh shoot!
No, it was like a lot of more obscure shit. I think the first anime I ever watched as like an anime, and not as like a dub, was some weird shitty thing called Amnesia, which I've read reviews of more recently, where it was like, oh yeah, this is a piece of shit.
Dude, amnesia's such an from what I hear, amnesia's such an overused trope. And I basically just offed myself 8/10 of the way through this mission, and now I'm kind of unhappy.
Yeah, I could tell.
Dude, this game is fun, but there's no checkpoint system, so when you confuse the sky for the ocean, you can pull some stupid stuff.
I
Ah,
have
okay.
legitimately no idea what the fuck you're playing.
This is Project Wingman. It was like the second
Ah, yeah.
yeah, second best-selling Steam game last December. I bought it at full price because like I just started my winter break. I'm like, well, I'm done with finals and I hope I never have to go through those again. I guess I can play this while I wait for the next round. So I beat the campaign, as it turns out, on easy, not on normal, which I feel kind of bad about. So I'm replaying it through the hardest difficulty. But I think what I should do instead is try out conquest modes, and that's a big advertised feature or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. So nowadays, what is your opinion? Okay, so one thing I always felt kind of awkward on regarding the entire anime verse is that I feel like it was really too misogynistic. Now, of course, it's an East Asian socially conservative country, so no surprise there. But what's your
Uh,
take on it?
I think there's certainly things. There's your high school dads that are known for being quite nationalistic and sexist, but then you get like, I mean, you get like Manga Time Garara, which I would say are probably, from what I understand of a lot of more feminist views on media, is a lot less sexist. You A lot of that specific manga branding, you still sort of get a lot of the same tropes, I think, especially in the anime adaptations, but you do get a lot of characters who aren't just um, a base model with a bunch of hits flopping around every 10 seconds. Again, I've even. There's one manga I quite like is Witchcraft Work. But I remember the anime, unlike the manga, did focus a lot on the main female character's breast. So I think there's also a difference between how manga is made and sort of when they can animate anything.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about this to make any commentary. I just gotta go by what I observe. Okay, so let me think of something else that's kind of adjacent. Dang, I'm blanking out the one thing I would. Okay, so do you feel like the inceldom of like the average anime viewer has been going up or going down with time?
I think you get a lot of. I think because you do get a lot of male you get a lot of like weeaboos meeting other weeaboos of acceptable orientation, but you also get a lot of people who watch a lot of the weirder stuff, and I think much like any media that does sort of like change their views on sort of certain topics. I mean, I think the worst example would be that fucking what the fuck it's called now. There was a anime recently that blew up. That was like a character who looked about 12, but her tits were like the size of her face. And you see a lot of people complaining about the character design, where like focusing on the wrong aspect of the character design that was being complained about.
Yeah, it's certainly a very strange phenomenon overall.
I mean, yeah, it's, certainly I believe someone once did like a comparison of like the average cup size in anime versus like actual cup sizes in Japan.
Dude, that stuff has given so many people such a skewed interpretation of things. It's rather hilarious. Well, sadly hilarious, you know.
Yeah, because I remember there was like, I think it was for Asia Lane, and it was like sort of used before anime, and it was like small, this, medium, big, impossible, and then it was like after anime, and they were all slanted left, right. So it was like nothing, small, medium, whatever, maximum, whatever.
Yeah. Alright, so I guess a few personal questions on the presentation here. I remember in the past you said that my accent was exceptionally, like, super American. Is that perception?
Oh, yeah. I would probably think you were white if I didn't know you weren't. That's horrible.
Don't, dude, it's okay, man. I'm half white. I can take the jokes. In fact, half the time I'm saying them anyway.
Yeah,
it's one of the advantages.
But yeah, you do sound like, I don't know, what side are you white on?
I sound white, and I look white on paper, which gets you pretty far in this country, especially in the South.
I assume it's sort of like the sad side then.
Yeah, it could always be worse, though.
I guess. Yeah.
Get this, you're going to find this later. I'm not sure if I told you, but, I was actually born further north in Kentucky, but my family moved to Georgia because Kentucky itself was actually too racist to live in.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
It's kind of, it's not many people would expect, considering the former Confederacy. But no, Atlanta is a great city, and I'm very proud to be one of the people here.
We were talking earlier about the inceldom in the anime community. I know there's amongst half white. That's really horrible.
It's fine. It's fine. Look. Just say it a lot. Don't worry about it. I understand. Okay. Look, I know of you as a tolerant person. It's okay. I'm covering for you.
Okay. You sort of have. I remember there was a lot of these half white, half Asian kids who were very incel-like in a very specific way, and this was like this big. Happers, I think they call themselves.
I mean, I've run into a few of the kinds you're talking about on the internet. I'm aware of the phenomenon.
So were you ever like a part of that, or?
No, dude. My dad is. I have to credit my father for upbringing me because, like, if you didn't know anything about him, you'd think he's like a Bernie Sanders supporter. Because he talks like one half the time. But no, he's given me a very good grounding on how to properly be aware of, like, social justice and all that, which you wouldn't expect. But the thing is, by some metrics, I wouldn't even be considered half-white, because I think my paternal grandfather's ethnically Sami, and that side of the family immigrated here because of repression, and they're in Finland, so... I guess there's the fact my dad faced racism because he looked more Asian because of Sami ancestry, and the same goes for his father, so... the family has had a good understanding of that issue, which has been fortunate in helping me avoid that, just because it's part of the fundamental assumptions and how I was raised. But, okay, well, this kind of ties into the America's conflicts of, like, how it deals with ethnicity, too, because a lot of people here, because of, like, the conventional norms of you gotta be, like, one group, kind of fall into that trap, whereas I feel that should not be the case. and that the multi-ethnic background's very advantageous. I mean, I'll say it this way: I don't identify as Asian or white. I identify as mixed, but more importantly, I identify as an American because the social fabric of this country allows me to do so without negative consequence. If that, I mean, does that answer your question anyway, or would you like me to elaborate?
Oh, yeah, that answers it. I just suddenly realized I could ask that question because I remember reading a lot of these mixed race people who were very angsty about being seen as Asian, being seen as white, depending on the situation, and a lot of it are just borderline racist.
Dude, don't worry. Asians here and are racist too. Just that's another problem, obviously, but it's not even an American problem because Asians are racist even against themselves over in East Asia. So it's like the grand issue that can never resolve itself, right? Look, it's just a mess. Take my word for it. But it's a mess that's getting better with time. But we've still got a lot of work, as you know.
Fuck, I wish I knew what those future people are called in that South Park thing, where it's like the entire human race is just one mono race.
Honestly, like, I don't know how that would turn out because even if it does happen, I feel like we're always going to find excuses to.
Oh yeah, it'll be like class or something.
But still, it's good to take away. It's always good to take away reasons to fight, regardless of if. Well, one of the things I've determined is that sometimes you don't need to solve 100% of a problem to get things within acceptable boundaries. Never let perfect be the enemy of good.
Okay.
All right, enough moralizing on my part. Any other topics you'd like to bring up for discussion?
I don't know. I guess I could mention about how I'm kind of surprised that you've never really watched anime.
Well, I mean, I did.
Myself sometimes would ask you about PvP or something, but oh yeah, this dude doesn't watch anime.
Actually, I can add. Well, I'll put it this way. Like in high school, I did watch for a period of 2 years, but I didn't really watch any after that. Like most recent was maybe about a year and a half ago as the pandemic isolation began. I watched the first episode of season 2 of Attack on Titan, and then that was it. After that, it's I went back to ignoring stuff. I guess the most interaction I have with anime right now is playing Arknights, but I mostly do that just because it's I look at it more as a political drama paywall behind gacha mechanics. So.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it. I mean, maybe I'm in too deep and maybe I'm not, but
yeah,
look.
It's sort of
I'm in a pleasant equilibrium.
That people are like, oh my god, this plot is so dark and edgy, and this character dies.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I literally have not watched any of what people would call good anime, so I have no context on how that stuff is supposed to be. Like Neon Genesis Evangelion, Full Metal Alchemist, haven't touched that ever, probably never will, so.
I only watched Evangelion because I think towards basically my parents set up this television and stuck an Amazon Fire Stick in it and basically just had it in my living room, but for lack of a better word, the living room. So now I just have a TV that has Netflix, and I've seen 3 things on it, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion, and Evangelion, and the film of Golden Panzer.
So, so you're blaming your parents for your affliction is what you're doing, right?
Oh god, no. I was watching shit a decade ago. Probably more than, about a decade ago. That's why I was watching on YouTube, because I was really young and didn't know that all these fantastic websites that had them, that wasn't flipped or with a weird filter thing where it gets darker outside in the edges of the screen.
Dude, do you remember, okay, so old YouTube, do you remember YouTube poops? Or they ever a thing over there?
I mean, there's the internet is the internet, really. I think the Anglophone internet is kind of the same thing. I mean, I remember watching YouTube poops, but I think that's more because I got into stuff like machinima.
Oh yeah, that stuff too. And all this stuff that we're never going to experience again. How fun.
I guess. I think it's one of those things the internet kind of moves on from.
Well, it's always good to revisit, get context for where you are now, but there's a point to that too. Alright,
Yeah.
okay, so final question. What is it that about Girls and Panzer that really gets to you as opposed to the other properties?
Uh, I think it's because it's sort of like there's a lot of anime based on national stereotypes. You have your Infinite Straight Off, which we kind of have to call Infinite Straight Off now because we can't call it IS again, which was a harem anime, um, in which you have this Japanese boy who goes to this international school where they all use mechs, kind of mech suit type things, where it's sort of like the very small end of mech. And naturally, the plot is that he's the only male that can use these things that have
Oh, yes.
switched over the natural boundaries of Japanese society to be more feminist because only women can use these powerful weapon systems. And naturally, he ends up with a harem with like a bunch of childhood friendly character,
Oh,
a
yes,
Chinese
that...
childhood friendly character, a uptight British character, a French character who pretended male for a couple episodes, and then a militant German from the military who worked in the Bundeswehr.
Oh, yes, only the best, right? Only the best.
Yeah, then there's, I guess the other stereotype I can think of is Talia.
Oh, yes. Can call
Long-running
for women.
thing with... No, you...
I'm just joking,
Then
I'm just joking, I know.
there's,
It's a
I
fun
mean,
joke to make.
there's like... Because there's also the gender swap version made by the creator where it's like gender swap.
Oh, great, that sounds like it's very...
And you
Oh,
also get like people then also from there shipping the gender swaps with the normals of normals,
of
gender swaps of
course.
different nations, and yeah, that was a weird community.
I think I've seen some of that stuff too, just like perusing Reddit. It can be intense, folks, and not always in the best ways.
Yeah, it's very strange. 'Cause I think looking back now and reading up on it because of like websites like TV Tropes, I can find out like the differences between fan bases, and it's very interesting. Actually, quite interesting seeing the differences in how Japanese fans get certain characters and Western fans.
Yeah, well, I guess we should all enjoy this while we can before, Oh yeah, actually, something else I do want to ask you. How has climate change affected the climate of Scotland?
I mean, I think I don't know. I don't think I've lived really long enough to can't really say, but you do sort of have like the winters are like kind of move. You'll get your usual rain like December, a bit of snow, and then sometimes in like April or whatever, it'll just like snow.
Yeah, I remember
Or
what snow used to be like here. Doesn't exist anymore since the past 5 years.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so, something else, like... Alright, so now I guess some meta commentary, if you so will, on the two communities which we are active in. Do you have any, opinions?
Which one by communities we're
You,
part
you,
of?
you know which ones I'm talking about.
So, I think there's Shiza specifically, if I assume that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that
I,
would...
s- I find that sometimes it will just be like the same joke. You'll go on it and it's like, oh, Dresden, great. Or it'll be about like tanks. I've noticed that one guy is just keeps going on about Sherman a lot. Woodstress, I think.
It's a bit circle jerky.
I mean, kind of the point. Okay,
Oh, that's
now I've
fair.
said that Woodstress posts a lot of Sherman stuff. I've just clicked on it and he's talking about the flower class. Okay, I look like an idiot. But yeah, it's, you know, Sherman, something in French. Um, Bunker posting a YouTube video. Um, Dresden, some old photograph, old scan, something about cars.
You
You
know?
know,
Yeah. Do you ever feel like it does get excessive?
sometimes. I think the worst. I think the worst I've seen is usually outside. I think Max does quite a good job of shutting a lot of things down before they get bad.
I agree.
The worst I've seen was on a I think it was one of Bad History's weird free-for-all things, and someone said that when he was playing Genshin Impact, he would watch tons of shit about the Japanese war crimes just so he didn't become a weeb, which I thought was a bit weird because you never get like, oh, before I read Tintin, I read about the Congo massacres because I'm a fan of Belgium, you know.
Yeah, you guess what? It's a bit too heavy of the LARP.
I mean, I think that was Lark. I think he was very surprised when I pointed out the game was Chinese. So.
Yeah.
I do find that people do get excessive. Because, do you remember that guy who posted that thing about the firebombing of Tokyo that got shut down very quickly?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you did miss it. I think you were very confused when someone made a Met post about it, but because there are a lot of issues regarding
Pro-atrocity counter-jerking.
Yeah, because I think specifically with like Tokyo, a lot of the dead were like women and children, and like Japan doesn't get like universal suffrage until 46.
I mean, I guess my personal take. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the problem with all that Ultranet stuff is that ultimately just gets your own country people, and I don't think these countries have done a good job of remembering that part.
Even if that's the government. I mean, I don't think people are actively going out of their ways, because I mean, you find a lot of articles talking about the situation, and it's like, for like in China, the massacres are this big cultural thing. You get films made about them, but in Japan, the history lessons teach is like a sentence that is like, massacres were committed, and the government fights against the teachers' unions over how big that number should be. Because a lot of it does get flanderized into the Japanese flat-out refuse, but you do get this fight between teachers' unions and historians and the government, particularly and especially the LDP and a lot of historians who sort of follow them, where you do get them fighting. It's not just this thing where it kind of gets flanderized to where the Japanese all deny atrocities because kind of naturally hate. I don't know. I don't want to end up strawmanning the opposite argument, obviously. So.
Yeah. No, it's good to have these discussions. It's important.
Yeah.
As long as I get to keep my visa, that is. It's good to have these discussions. But
you sort of have like, how do I word this? Fuck. Okay, a certain East Asian country that was part of Japan for the longest.
Oh, that's a mess on its own, folks.
Yeah. So where you have Japan, there's quite a lot of good tension. There's sort of like bounces between sort of like good relations, particularly now because of the whole vaccine thing. But you also had like counts of like people protesting because even there, wow, that was probably the lightest, from what I understand, was the light imperial conquest was still relatively one of the. It's like other places where it's like, oh yeah, it was like a light colonial thing, but even that's still like
brutal.
Major.
Yeah, it's look, man. We're talking. Yeah, it's. I like to refer. No, it's a mess, man. It's always going to. I don't think it was a mess before, and it was just made even more of a mess in the 20th century. These people will die off, but I don't think that's the full issue. But the most important thing, I think, is just making sure people get along now, so none of this ever happens again.
I mean, yeah, I think
that's the most important
thing. With the LDP, is that they refuse and they put their foot down and go, we will not pay for comfort women issues. We will not accept. I think the only good thing I've noticed is that apparently their prime ministers are go even less now to Yasukuni.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some things that they face actual pushback on, some things they won't. And you gotta remember, like, they have to appeal to the Ultranats in their country, too, because... Well, I mean, that doesn't mean I approve of them, obviously, but, you know, it's a messed up situation, you know, and it's of their making, and now they have to deal with it.
I mean, I know the LDP have, like, pissed off a lot of Japanese people. I don't know whether this is just because I read a lot of more center-left newspapers that obviously wouldn't be particularly supportive of them anyway, but you get the feeling that a lot of them don't like how optimistic Suga is about the pandemic.
Yeah,
Reading a news article about how they were very optimistic about, oh yeah, we'll decrease the lockdown and it'll be great and it's fine. And now it's like a lot of really bad shit. Because I was reading an article about how you have a lot of people dying at home because now they only let in people with extreme COVID. You have a lot of people being at home and it getting worse and then they die and nobody knows about it for like days. And so they have to have, so like the family has to like pay for someone to go to their house and clean up and just clean the house.
Man,
Because
that's...
there's been a rotten corpse there for like a couple of days in like humid Tokyo.
Man, yeah. It's not a good situation with this pandemic overall.
Yeah.
I know. I feel fortunate that, as an American, I've managed to get early access to the vaccines practically. Oh, actually, I do want to ask about how has vaccination proceeded in the United Kingdom? Is it a situation where everyone who wants it can get it right now, or is it still being rolled in?
I mean, I think it's one of those things where you get a letter and it's like, turn up at this place at this time and we will inject you. I haven't really heard much to the opposite, and that was my experience, was they just sent a letter from the NHS to my parents' house, worryingly, that said, go here this day and we'll get the vaccine.
Alright, that's, it's not too dissimilar to, here, but I guess we don't have this centralized health system. A lot of that, to get it, at least when I got it, I found it specifically because I saw a post on the subreddit for my region of the country that said CVS had availability. So then I went to CVS and booked it from there. And then I think that's when it was still being phased in for like vulnerable groups, and I unluckily counted in that sense. But now it's pretty much just walk up, you get it.
Yeah, I know, yeah, but it's sort of, I guess where there is a centralized thing that can kind of control everything easily, it's just easier to just have that system inform people to turn up at this time and get injected.
Yeah, I just wish people actually would take it now, but...
I mean, think about the Isle of Jersey, where I think 97% are vaccinated, but you still get like people outside of the vaccination centers complaining.
Yeah, it looks like I accidentally stole this dude's helicopter, but it was too late for me to see. This guy's so pissed. I'm sorry if I'm not paying attention.
That's fine.
Okay, here, hold on. Let me see how he'll act. Dude, this guy, okay, now he's being homophobic. That's unacceptable. Oh, what was it? Oh, wait, what was it? Is that friendly rocket? Okay, yeah, so... Honestly... I'm sorry. I just kind of lost it with this idiot. This homophobic idiot. I'm being nice and offering to pick him up, and now he still won't get in. He's probably an anti-vaxxer.
Fuck. Have you ever heard of a YouTuber called the Golden One?
The Golden One? No, not exactly.
So he's a white nationalist Swedish, and rather infamously, he has I think, I haven't personally watched the YouTube video, but he has a Skyrim playthrough where every time he kills someone, he's like, oh, this is a member of the SJWs or whatever.
Oh, that's very non-violent and great.
It is amusing how he's like, it is like a child, where it's like, oh, this is my bully at school, and I'm beating him in the video game because I can't beat him in real life. It's mildly amusing. I mean, I can probably send a lot of the articles and videos I'm talking about to you, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean... Alright, let's see if this works. Man, if there's one thing... I like PC gaming, but I just wish it wasn't so homophobic and bigoted.
Yeah, I play like one of the good things is that you can just ignore a lot of it.
To a point, I would say. But I mean, if you can find communities, that helps because, especially Rising Storm 2, there's this one server and one guy, Mr. Deads. That guy is great on running a non-toxic community. I remember one time I was playing on it for like a long campaign, and this dude just came on and started shouting a bunch of racial slurs in chat and all that. I set up a vote kick, and he was gone within like half a second. It was like so quick, even Mr. Deads like applauded the people on the server.
I mean, I think the issue is like War Thunder, you don't really have like dedicated servers. Well, you do have dedicated servers, but you don't have that sort of thing where you go in a cycle with these same people until they leave. It's sort of a this is just what they have, deal with it kind of thing.
Oh.
You just get a lot of Russians.
Yeah, I guess that's the drawback of things. But so do you think overall in time, as the PC gaming community grows more diverse, do you think it'll improve, or is this just an eternal problem with gamers?
I think that's an internal problem with teenagers and those who are teenage-minded.
Fair, yeah. Man, I don't know, I was thinking about today, what was it, the classic meme, the Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. I kind of feel like that's a lot of it's on Activision for letting that propagate, but at the same time, legally speaking, these are M-rated games, so the kids shouldn't have been playing them in the first place, but
yeah,
I don't know. Can't nanny state these things. At the end of the day, it's up to the parents to watch over this, but they don't bother, and that's assuming
that was a big issue, wasn't it? When sort of the ESRB and whatever came out, was like parents still didn't really give a shit until they started talking about like banning 18 pluses.
Honestly, I feel like the ESRB system is like, it's not well calibrated too, because you could have like non-violent games with slight nudity. It's rated higher than something like Battlefield 3, and then
I remember reading about like cultural dissonance. I think it's more about film ratings, where it's sort of like in country X, this film is rated highly, like R, but in like Germany or like Japan, it's like children's film.
Yeah, I mean,
point out that like horror films in Japan tend to get a lower rating than they do in the America.
well, America has like a big social conservative movement that is responsible for a lot of this. So, we're prudes in comparison to a lot of other countries. For better or for worse, there's some things where I do agree it's right and others where it's not, but that's the case. So that's why games like this will be rated the same as games like GTA 5 where you can actually visit strip clubs,
Yeah. I mean, I guess a lot of it is cultural dissonance, where like in one country violence is more acceptable than more sexual content, but in another country it might be the opposite, and maybe somewhere it's neither.
Yeah, but I'm confident things will change, because even now, I think our standards for that kind of stuff have become more Europeanized with the growth of our more liberally, internationally minded upper middle class types. But who knows? We'll see. We'll see. And I pray to
there might be massive religious reawakening somewhere.
Yeah.
It just kind of slides back into this, I guess, Christian, just purely by demographics.
I mean, this country's on a permanent course for multi-ethnic majority, I guess, to so speak.
One thing I find quite interesting is that pre 9/11, you sort of have conservative Muslims actually supporting the Republicans.
Yeah.
But then that like dies instantly as soon as like 9/11 happens, and a lot of Republican rhetoric becomes slightly more Islamophobic.
That's because ever since civil rights, the Southerners started voting for Republicans because being seen as anti-government was the best way to circumvent civil rights and no counter-government, all that stuff. And that's what we got today. So, I mean, in all honesty, right, if you look at it from a statistical point of view, I could have been like the perfect Republican voter, but there's no way in hell I'll ever vote for them because I have no tolerance for their bigotry and all that stuff. So,
yeah, understandably.
So it's like, I mean, to be fair, it's kind of funny because I like vote Democrat, and then I don't even have any policy complaints, to be honest. But even if I did, I'd still be voting like them just because they're so odious and there's so much. Like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. they're a threat to my well-being in life. Like, a few months ago, there was a shooting of, like, some white incel went and shot up a bunch of people at Asian massage parlors a few months ago. It was basically 9/11 for the Asian American community. You know, and that happened because of Trump's rhetoric and the rhetoric that the Republicans did not push back on, right? So stuff like that's going to happen. It happened to Asians. It's, you know, there were hate crimes against Muslims. Stuff like that's always been happening to blacks. As long as... Sorry.
Recently there was a shooting.
Yeah, I heard about that.
The worst shooting in the UK in 2010. About 5 people died.
Yeah.
I guess in America that, from like the news, that's like quite a low. I don't know how to word that in a good way.
You know, there's fine. These are heavy issues. These are not good things.
I don't like say that, like, oh yeah, that's like a low kill streak or something.
Well, no, it's important.
It didn't sound like I was trivializing it.
No, you're trying to make it a point, but don't. There's no fault in trying to communicate something properly, right? I'm just saying, there's a lot of bad dysfunction in this country right now. I'll be honest. I'm optimistic. I'm confident that in like 10, 20 years, we'll be fine. But until then, we're going to be in for a rough time over here.
It's one of those things where, like, you have the excesses of, not the excesses. I think that's kind of more like, not the rhetoric, but sort of like the Weimar period is this thing of big democracy, and then you just have a lot of people who don't like it voting out for these.
Yeah, I mean, that's one. I guess, yeah. If there is one thing I can say about America that's lucky, is that we love elections and our democracy. Even the racists love elections. They just don't want people like me voting in them.
Yeah.
So that's our advantage. We've had, like, institutionally, the reason American democracy has persisted and reformed is because A, institutional power, and B, a strong judicial system. Oh, that is so... Okay, whatever, man. That is so unfair. I had him down the sights, and he beat me with a slow TTK gun. Man, that's life right there. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
started watching your stream, so it's not quite as out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I just gotta say that, yeah, usually, like, sometimes, like, when I'm not paying attention, I can do really good. And other times when I'm trying to talk and have sustained a conversation, I just lose all concentration. It does not turn out well for my KDR. But even then, I don't know, Battlefield 3 was the first game I really started playing heavily, and, like, I had, like, a .3 KD when I first started, not even that high. So,
nice.
It was fun. I'd go, like, 2 to 32 on, like, my first rounds. This was the funniest thing ever. And I had fun doing it.
I think the Rising Storm one is slightly lower than that.
Yeah.
I think I did play it while having it play really slowly, so that probably didn't help.
Honestly, I think a third of my time in Rising Storm is actually spent as the commander.
Okay.
It's I guess not a lot of people do it, but if you do it right, you can. Well, I'm not claiming to be a god tier, but I think I can do a decent job if people are all things balanced. But it can be fulfilling. I think if you have a bad PC, it's probably better to just have your computer devoted to rendering a map and stuff, as opposed to trying to peek through the bushes.
Yeah.
Is this the homophobic dude? No, I switched squads.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not gonna read. And okay, yeah, I was flanked. All right, do you have any other topics you'd like to bring up?
I guess. It's all exciting. So you were talking about food earlier.
Yes.
Quite a lot earlier. What would you say is sort of like, I guess, Georgian food?
It depends because, like, in the American Southeast, the conventional stereotype is fried chicken, and there's also barbecue, which is general. But I think one thing I've heard as in context specific to Georgia, and that was more for the coastal plains region, is shrimp and grits. But that's become popular across the South. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, when it comes to nowadays, like, the stuff that Georgia's known for in food is Chick-fil-A and Coke. A bit commercialistic here, but that makes a lot of money.
Chick-fil-A is the homophobic one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
homophobic. Because a lot of people protested, so they just kicked them out, I think.
It's the homophobic one, but it's also the most profitable per restaurant. So take that as you will for this country.
Low standards and low wages. That'll be my guess.
Yeah, and then Chick-fil-A is super popular here. I can't, it's longest wait times in line purely for the purely because of how much volume there is for the drive-throughs. People still love it, still top rated. I gotta admit, I've eaten there a few times, just because there's so many of them, it's easy to get to, and like, dude, I'm just saying, man. Chick-fil-A does make a good product. Now, personally, I prefer Arby's, but that's because I like to pretend I'm a northerner like the rest of my family, but that doesn't always succeed. So yeah, shrimp and grits if you want to go old style, variations of barbecue and fried chicken, because that's always, that each state has its own twist.
What's that film called? I know there's a legal drama, where one way someone's witness statement is proving false is because of his grit. I can't remember the specifics because I haven't seen that clip in a while, but it's sort of like at what point? And that just reminded me of it.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about, but it certainly sounds interesting.
Fucking Danny Vito, I think. My cousin Vinny, that's it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it. Oh, there's also,
I hear it's good.
there's one other thing that's to the southeast. It's fried green tomatoes. So you pluck tomatoes when they're green, slice them, and fry them. I know about that because it's the title of a movie where a woman kills her abusive husband, then serves him at a restaurant. That's all I know about the film. But
yeah, actually, I quickly looked it up, and there have been a few attempts to have Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I've heard about those, and they always get shut down.
Closed in March 2020 after the owners of the place of the shopping centre opted not to continue the lease beyond the 6-month pilot period in face of the protest. Then Abbeymoor, it was closed in January 2020 amid protest and controversy from locals and customers regarding to the change the nation's charities for an anti-LGBT rights causes.
Yeah, it's. The thing is, I'm not trying to defend Chick-fil-A here because I got LGBT family members and I care about them and their rights. But a lot of companies in this country support the Republicans, and those Republicans, I'd say, are all about as homophobic as the other. But because they try to platform themselves more as like economic liberalization and all that, you don't hear about as much. So I'm not trying to defend Chick-fil-A, but I am saying that the entire industry morass is friendly to those anti-LGBT interests just purely out of their own personal motivation. So.
Well, yeah, you sort of have. There was a issue about tariffs of sugar beet recently, and I think the company that benefited, coincidentally, was also a major supporter of Brexit candidates and Brexit supporters, which I'm sure is totally a coincidence.
Yep. Yeah, it's okay. So, but continue on food, I guess. I told you about the microbrewery scene in Georgia. That's a big thing. There's. Okay, I'll be honest. Like, my family is actually from like north, right? So I got personal bias against like southern stuff just because of that.
Okay.
So like I don't believe in southern hospitality, and no one who has a brain should either, because I think a lot of there's some southern food that's good and there's some that I find overrated. Personally, I prefer the hearty meat-based, potato-based northern stuff. But I do have an appreciation for other things. The fundamental difference is a lot of the South, the cooking there is defined by the poor, as it is for most parts of the world. But Southern poor is really poor because Southern poor was the enslaved peoples, which, obviously not an ideal situation. And that's where a lot of the common legacy is drawn from. I'll be right back. I got a phone call.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. It looks like I will have to be going soon, but before we end things, I do got one final question for you.
Okay.
Who is best girl?
Fuck, I'm not really one of those people that has like a best girl and it stays the same for like decades. I think at the moment it's Adrian Lane's Hermes, mostly because of I'm getting back into sort of the Yu-Gi-Oh kind of thing, and because I'm reading a lot about the Falklands War, where the flagship of the British task force was shares the name Hermes.
Very fair. All right. Do you have any final questions on your end?
I can't think of anything there.
Oh, that's fine. It was nice having you on. It's good to get some
Yep.
diversity here.
Yep.
And yeah, continue to see you on. And if you ever want to collab again, please let me know, and I'll make the time for it. Even though I'll probably be crying over my assignments.
Yep. Me too.
Oh, the autumn is going to be fun.
Yep.
Anyways, be seeing you around, and thanks for showing up.
Yes.